Good afternoon, everybody. Sean Hewitt here from the Trusted Business Community Association, and today I've got my guest speaker is Paul Fitzsimmons, who's being interviewed as one of our premier partners from Wilford Smith. Now, Paul on LinkedIn professes to be a master of dad jokes. He's an HR support, conveyancing, and criminal mastermind, albeit not as a criminal, only in the major arena to protect yourselves. But I'd like to obviously welcome Paul to having a chat with us today, and for him to explain everything about what Wilford Smith can offer you, the listener. Paul, over to you yourself, my friend. Welcome on board. Nice to have you here today.
Thanks, Sean. Nice to be here. Yeah, obviously at Wilford Smith, obviously when I came over, I'm an ex-business owner myself, and I've learned the pitfalls that businesses deal with on a day-to-day basis. So our main area of law is HR and employment law. So having lived it and breathed it, I thought, why not work within a regulated entity to actually see how we can do it properly away from some of the others. Obviously, all the other stuff is I like to inject a bit of fun and humour into it. Lawyers, solicitors, terrible reputation of being stick in the muds and not having much of a personality. So why not inject a little bit of myself into it while I'm doing it?
Absolutely, mate. You certainly bring a brightening to the room, and I see you've even ironed that lovely, nice, brightest shirt that
I
you
even
promised
went
you would
for
do.
it, exactly. I promised I
Good
would,
man.
and sure enough, I did.
Good man. Well, the nice thing about it, Paul, I've actually met you face to face, and in these times where we've been sort of like very much disjointed in recent years, you and I got to know each other through the lockdown years, and of course after lockdown we had the privilege. Oh, I certainly had the privilege, and I had certainly had the pleasure of meeting you when you travelled down on a works function. I met you in Chelmsford. So it's nice to actually see you again here, back in the virtual world, but it's really much better to have met you face to face, and it's nice to obviously have you here today. So tell us a little bit more about Wilford Smith and the nitty gritty of what it's all about, and how you can help those that are listening into the call, and what areas they predominantly cover.
No problem. Well, Wilford Smith is a 42-year-old law practice. It was set up in Sheffield by Steve Smith, who was the father of our now MD, and her and her husband, who run the company. Steve sadly passed away over the COVID years, not through COVID, just through illness and bad health. So they've now took the business on in a more commercially minded direction. So rather than just being a transactional law firm like many were, waiting for work to come in, we then brought in the commercial side, the employment law side, commercial law. Wilford Smith was founded and built on a criminal background. And talking about criminal law sounds weird because people just think of criminals weirdly, but that could be speeding, motoring offences, drink driving. Everyone makes mistakes from time to time, and we're there to help them then mitigate and make sure they get a fair hearing. So that's one part of the business. The other key area is conveyancing. That has predominantly always been, and the housing market's up and down as it is at the moment. There's currently a lot less transactions going on with interest rates and inflation. So we're there again to make sure we're not a cheap option. We're not going to say that, but we're by no far a really dear option either. But what they'll get is proper advice, personal service. We don't use portals. We don't hide behind screens. If you pick up the phone, you're going to get me as an account manager. I'll then find the lawyer who's dealing with the case if they're not responding, and we'll keep that communication always going in everything that we do. So they're the two parts where it was founded. We do other parts as well: commercial law, wills and probate, lasting powers of attorney. Anything that is legal that is required is what we do. As I said, though, my main area and what we tend to work with Sean and the trusted community is on the HR service. So HR and employment law, as we said, COVID was when we met, and furlough was a word that no one had ever even heard of before. It was, what's furlough? We were getting people ringing us up left, right, and centre. So we developed the HR support in response to that. HR has always been done by people who've lived it and breathed it, either HR consultants or some conglomerates throughout the country who do it. And there's a place for them, but they give advice which is just stuff that you can find on Google. They don't think of the end game. And as lawyers and a law firm, we were sick of picking up the pieces at the very back end when it got to tribunal. So what we try and do for businesses now is we make sure from day one that they are covered with all the procedural, all the contracts, all the documentation. We put all of that in place. We don't give anyone templates. We hate templates. There's no such thing as one with us. You tell us a problem, we draft it. We draft the letter, we draft the policy, all from scratch. That way, there's no miscommunication. You can't insert some of your own words. And I have a particular client, and let's just call him Scott. It's not Scott, so don't worry. But I always put, don't insert Scott's lines, because Scott has his way of doing it, and if he did it that way, he would be in trouble. He would end up in a tribunal, and that is what we do. We prevent companies ending up in tribunal by making sure they've done stuff properly, correctly, and suiting their business in line. We partner, as you know, we do with all clients. We partner. We're not just there to give you advice. If we think you're going to do something wrong, we'll tell you why, and we'll tell you the correct way of doing it. And by following what we've said, we give you our group insurance policy. But then if that person, that individual that you've dismissed or not hired for whatever reason it might be, if they took you to an employment tribunal, you've got our lawyers turning up in court, the same person who's dealt with the case right the way through from start to finish. They'll turn up in court, they'll fight the case, and if we lost, which we're currently on a 98% win rate on the employment tribunals, I'll explain that 2% in a second. If we lose, we'll pay the awards out of the insurance because we're that confident that we're right. The 2%, the ones we lose, are the ones, unfortunately, where we get hired too late to fix a problem. The problem's already happened. Our job is then just to mitigate it. We could say that we've actually won them because we've reduced the losses that they were facing from, say, 20,000 down to 10,000 in one particular instance. It's still a tribunal loss, and that's not covered by the insurance because we weren't involved in the issue. But that's the type of stuff that we do. So hopefully, any other people who use the service and the rest of the members, that gives a bit of an insight into it.
I think the one thing, I mean, I don't know if you're aware of this actually, Paul, but I skated around the employment law arena, working as a consultant for a company that offered support to businesses to make sure that they were compliant. And the amount of people that from back in those days, and I'm sure it still happens today, that there is this sort of there was "it will never happen to me" criteria. And the other section of people was it wasn't so much that they were flippant with it, but they thought they had procedures in place but didn't really know to the level that they needed them. And then when you explained something to somebody, for instance, like the famous Quick Fit case, where the guy basically resigns on the back of a receipt and then goes back for his job, and then Quick Fit lost that massive case because it was a massive case years and years ago, but because they didn't have the final procedures in place, they just missed out one or two little things, and that they ended up losing that. And that's a big pity, but it just goes to show, no matter how small you are or big you are or well known you are, if things aren't in place and you're not ticking all those boxes to make sure that you're following those procedures, you could end up on the wrong side of a tribunal case.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. And the tribunals are so easy for an employee to, now just for clarity, we only deal with businesses when it comes to employment law.
Yeah.
We don't sit on both sides of the fence like some firms. Our interest is protecting the business. Now, it is so easy for an individual, and as you say, the Quick Fit one was a prime one. There's many cases that you could reel off. But if you make one little mistake, it costs the person nothing to take you to a tribunal. Now, it used to be a couple of years ago, it cost someone about £1,200, £1,500 to file a tribunal. The European courts said that was unfair. So let's just make it free for everyone. But the businesses have to suffer and then defend themselves. So the tribunals have gone through the roof. There's currently about 50,000 still waiting to be heard and looked at. There's a massive backlog, especially after COVID, and the courts can't cope with them and it's only going to get worse. Unfortunately, we're not entering a recession, it looks like. That's not unfortunately, but it's fortunate we're not entering a recession. But when times are hard, the first thing that people will do if they get dismissed, they probably know in their own head they were rubbish at the job or there was reasons why they had to be let go. But right, I'm going to take it to tribunal because they're hoping for a settlement.
Yeah.
And our job is to say, well, don't just pay that settlement just to get rid of it. Fight it because it's not going to cost you anything.
No.
And if it did go to a tribunal and you lost, you're covered. But the cases that there was one only the other day where I did it on my LinkedIn, and it's I'd love anyone to follow me on LinkedIn. I have a bit of fun as I do it. There was a lady in Wales. She'd only been with the company about 2.5 months, and she wasn't let go in the totally correct way. They didn't turn up at court. They didn't defend themselves. And this lady's won £17,000 for being in a job for 2 months because they dismissed her when she was pregnant. So it went down as pregnancy discrimination
Yeah.
and sexual discrimination. But reading the limited info that we could see in the tribunal notes, there would have been a very easy way to make that happen on poor performance and short service.
Yeah.
But if you're not using advice that people think commercially, and as you say, there are companies out there who do it, they will try and go around the houses to make sure that you're really, really compliant. But if there's a rotten apple in a bowl, you need to get rid of the rotten apple. Make it happen, find a way. And that's kind of our motto.
Yeah. And I think the key thing is never think that you're not likely to, and be prepared. So employing a business like Wilford Smith to look after the HR and look after the support services behind employment law, getting that done before it goes, there's a problem, is the right way to do it, because you've then got all the support from you guys before, and the knowledge is there because they know they can turn to you if
You're
they
right.
feel they've got an issue arising.
And as you say, people can be flippant. It's never going to happen to me, or they treat it as a tick box exercise. Oh, I've got HR support. Well, actually, pick up the phone and use it. You've got
Yeah.
to make sure that you use it. Now, for a small company, our services cost from £105 a month. So if you had 5 staff, we'd be charging you £105 a month to give you unlimited advice, the insurance, all your documents drafted when you need it, and guiding you through this process. It's better
That's,
to do it now. We always
that's
say
peace of mind, isn't it?
prevention better than cure. It's
Yeah.
peace of mind. You know it's done, but you have to make sure you use it. We've had clients in the past, they ring us too late, and it's like, well, you didn't get us involved in the dismissal because they thought that they knew what they were doing, and they've learned the hard way. And they're great, they're ideal clients because what's the one thing you want to do when you've made an error? Fix it, and that's what we can do. But we'd rather not be fixing problems. We'd rather stop them happening in the first place.
Well, I must admit, when anybody's ever come to me and said to me about something that I may not know the full SP on, I've always gone, well, actually, I know enough to get myself in trouble, so I'll pass you over to an expert. And that's the
Yeah,
easiest way to do it, because there's no
that's it.
way somebody comes to me and says, HR, I'm going to go Wilford Smith. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I know a little bit about it, but I don't know it all. And I wouldn't know what the current terms and how things have changed since I
As
was
you
doing
say,
it.
it's an expert. That's what it
He's an
comes down to.
expert. Yeah, and I'm not. So that's why we love having you guys here as Premier Partners, because
Yeah.
if somebody does come to us directly and say, Sean, I've got a problem, what do we do? We've got this issue with this particular member of staff. I can just pass them straight over to
Yeah.
you as an expert Premier partner of ours and know that they're going to be in safe hands.
I always say it to clients, I don't mind tinkering with my car. I've changed brake pads, I'll change a bulb, I'll fill the washer. But if there's anything serious, that's going to a garage because I'm not confident that I've got to drive around in that car with my workmanship on it. And think of Wilford Smith as the garage. That's the easiest way of thinking of it. You want to make sure it's in the best hands, and it's all dealt with by lawyers. That's one of our big USPs. You go to these other companies, and the company that you maybe worked for in the past, which, as you say, we're aware of, there's two or three massive HR companies in the country, no denying it. But one of them in particular has recently just lost a massive tribunal because they're not lawyers. The judge asked them for copies of the transcripts between each other, and they weren't covered by legal privilege. So that is in films. You see someone else put $1 in my pocket. Everything you say now, you're going to be protected. That's how the films do it. Using a lawyer gives us that protection. So you could absolutely have a vendetta against the person that you are trying to dismiss, as was the case in this tribunal. And because they couldn't use legal privilege, they had to show all the notes, all the correspondence of where this person was tried to get rid of so many times. And they lost the tribunal because of it. It was discrimination.
Yeah.
Whereas with us, wouldn't have happened because it's covered.
They wouldn't have got to see those notes.
They wouldn't have got to see the notes. And that is one of the biggest things with using a law firm to do it.
And you just mentioned the price there, £105 a month. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so affordable.
Well, it
when you
is.
consider what that woman won £17,000 for working for a company for 2 months.
2 months she was there. And there's even tribunals, me and you have chatted about this one before, where people they've took them to a tribunal and they haven't even been an employee because they either didn't get an interview or didn't get the hire. And that's a conversation for another day. But the pricing is tiered. The more staff you've got, the slightly more you'll pay, obviously. The insurance needs to cover for the amount of staff and the anticipated usage of the service. But 5 staff, £105. If you go to about 20 staff, about £250. Still not mega money. If we like to break it down, if you think of it as approximately a cup of coffee a week per employee, you're going to be covered. That gives you the rough idea of what you're looking at. People like it broken down in simple terms like that, and it helps.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right, so Paul, where can people find you, mate? Because obviously after this interview, and it's going to be going live, not just on our YouTube channel, but it's also going to go live across social media. I'm sure there's going to be a few people who are going to want to reach out and ask you for some more questions or possibly even some advice. How do they get hold of you,
I would
mate?
hope so. Well, ultimately, you've got the trusted business community there. I like to think quite prominent on LinkedIn, so my LinkedIn profile, go on there and search for Paul Fitzsimmons. Our company website, www.wilfordsmith.com. We have a few social channels, but as a law firm, we haven't used them very, very. So our Facebook and our Instagram are there, and they will be responded to. But your best bet is the website. All the inquiries come through to me as well, and I disperse them out to the team. So you'll always do that, and LinkedIn are the best too.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much. Listen, Paul, it's been an absolute honour to catch up with you today, mate. I know, as I say, we see each other a fair bit of time, but due to both of our workloads, we've been rather busy, and it's nice to actually catch up with you and see you again today. Thanks for being part of our interview process.
Absolute pleasure.
And for everyone watching, don't forget, if you need HR, Wilford Smith, they will look after you, and you've got that protection having